I'll share it with you. Probably not a secret for you guys, but I'll share it anyways. Now, should you even consider using Kanban? That is sometimes the question I ask my customers, my clients, my colleagues. Should we, I mean, very many are doing Scrum. Should you maybe consider using Kanban? And what is Kanban? They ask me. Okay, then we take it from there. Now, the last thing it says, why you should never impose Kanban on any teams. Kanban can be quite extensive. Now, there are quite many opinions on Kanban. There are a few, or maybe more, Kanban schools, and the opinions are divided. I call myself agnostic, meaning that I don't prepare one school for another. So I hope, and that's really why I needed to make this base. So today is about the basics, and I needed to go back to the roots of Kanban myself to really find out what are the basics, where did it all start, and so on. And basically, the last disclaimer I have is that probably everything I say is debatable. And I'm a consultant, you know, my answer will be to your question, okay, it depends. So let's get started. And Kanban started at Toyota Production System. And it happened back in the 1940s. And it started in the lean manufacturing business, if I may call it so. And at that time, it was, lean is about limiting waste. So Taiichi Ono at Toyota Production System, he worked with this JIT, just in time, and also actually developed Kanban. And he did it to improve manufacturing efficiency. So when we work with Kanban, it's a limit to build up excess inventory at any point in production. So I'm far away from any software development, which may be your area of expertise and my own. But again, it started in the production at Toyota, and any point in production. And now the next one is pretty important to remember the next hour and so. In Kanban, we focus at flow. So focus on flow. And then actually they found out that Kanban, the Kanban system and the way to work with Kanban is excellent at promoting improvement. I'll not say that much about that today, but it is a fact. So I looked up in the Wikipedia something, and I found something else that I wanted to share with you. That Kanban is actually used to rate the demand. It uses the rate of demand to control the rate of production, passing demand from the end customer up through the chain of customers or processes. And when I read this, I come to think of every time, I don't do that very often, but if I order a new car, I mean, why do I have to wait 3 months? Maybe even more. But some of the answers is because they probably use Kanban out there and actually compare to the rate of demand. Now, unfortunately, I can't really see the chat. So I was wondering, maybe I could ask you to unmute yourself and share with us. How does what I have said right until now, how does that relate to software development and systems maintenance? In Danish, vedligehold driftsopgaver, systems maintenance. How does what we have been seeing at Toyota, how does that relate to software development? A few keywords, and if you would please unmute yourself, let me see if that works for us all.
I think that where you don't plan for a long time ahead, like you get error reporting coming from customer, that for me is an area where I see Kanban made into play.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I see that sometimes we have some big releases, firmware releases, where it can be pretty hard to actually test everything out. So whenever the consumers are starting to use it, there will be a lot of incoming flow, either as bugs or new requirements. And we tend to shift a bit back and forth between sprint and and Kanban to accommodate that. So I'm very curious on any ideas on that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
In the chat, it says we also need to dynamically balance demand against capacity, just like industry and retail.
Yeah, yeah. Good points.
Japan has Kanban as a method from it was its own term. How about Nordic countries? Do we have it similar?
Maybe we should ask Ulrik in next week. I don't know about that. I know a little about Japan, but it's true. It's actually a Japanese word as well.
I think the people I'm aware that use it do so with inspiration from Lean, and they just use the Japanese term.
Yeah.
That's what I know.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So now this is also an experiment. So this is a 2-minute animated video, and I really like it a lot. I like animated videos. I will start it, and you will probably complain a lot, and then I will actually mute. But
today I'm going to attempt to do Kanban in 2 minutes or less. Hi, this is Gary. Welcome to Development That Pays. Here's a super simple factory with just 2 machines. In an ideal world, both machines would operate at the same pace and work would flow smoothly from to do to done. But what if machine 1 is faster? The result is a pile of widgets building up in front of machine 2. This work in progress is a problem. There are obvious costs. There's money tied up in each of these items, and even the physical space that the queue takes up has to be paid for. There are also costs that are much less obvious. Like a high tide over a rocky shore, work in progress can hide a multitude of sins, such as machine downtime, extended setup times, and of course, quality issues. Reduce the work in progress, and these hidden issues become issues that can be, indeed need to be, addressed. But how do we go about reducing the work in progress? Well, by having machine 1 process items only when machine 2 is ready to receive them. Machine 2 needs a mechanism to be able to signal to machine 1 that it's ready, and the signal is in the form of a card, the now famous Kanban card. No longer are widgets pushed through the factory. They are now, thanks to the Kanban card, pulled through the factory. The Kanban system was born in the factories of Toyota, but has found favor in software development. We don't have machines, but we do have processes. We don't process widgets, but we do process tasks, and we can represent the processes and tasks on a board. In this case, the all-important pull system is implemented without the need for a Kanban card. An empty or nearly empty column is the signal to the previous column to send more tasks. The resulting low level of work in progress comes with a whole range of benefits: shorter cycle times, faster throughput, and less wasted time. Thank you very much for watching.
So this is really it's actually the most basic video that I ever saw about Kanban. I want to show you my first Kanban book. This is by Jesper Bø, one of the very, very experienced guys in Kanban. Many years ago, he wrote this one. He worked with Trifork at that time, Priming Kanban. It is in English. I can highly recommend it if you need more. So basic book, basic video. That is what I recommend. Let me continue with the slides. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you could unmute yourself, then what you just saw in the video, how is that then similar to Scrum? And if you have an idea about how is that different, yeah, use a chat or let's have a dialogue.
So I'd say Scrum has pull as well. It handles it somewhat differently. But each time a Scrum team meets to plan their sprint, that's essentially a pull event in my book.
Yeah.
They're pulling in a somewhat larger batch than a Kanban team might. So it's not one item, but usually several items, but it is pull. And the whole idea of the team members being the only ones participating in the estimating and therefore choosing how much the team will take on, that's all pull.
Yeah, that's really an interesting point. I didn't see it like that, but I fully agree. Any differences?
Often in Kanban, you get interrupts. I mean, there's an event, you get interrupted, you prioritize, then you find out, okay, what is next? When you do the normal sprint planning, you actually have a prioritized focus for the next period of time. You don't have that in Kanban. So I could imagine that Kanban is more stressful in the long run than compared to sprint.
Okay, more stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hang
Could
on
be.
to that one. Yeah. Yeah, could very well be. Yeah. So as I said in the beginning, Kanban is very, very much about flow. But when I think of flow, I always think of I think of the highway like this in the morning. This is really why I don't go by car at work. That was before Corona. I mean, queuing up. There's no flow on this highway over here. We could discuss whether flow is actually a focus from Scrum. Some would argue yes. That is really not what I experience. What I would say, but flow is so essential to Kanban. So that is really what we have to think about, and I'll get back to that. So let's look at Scrum and Kanban, and this is not as by any means a Scrum class or a Kanban class or anything, but so let's just look at how I chose to highlight Scrum. So we have a lot of events. We have the sprint planning in Scrum. We have the daily stand-up, refinement meetings. That is basically not a Scrum event, I know. We do review and demo, retrospective, and then we have the artifacts like product backlog, sprint backlog. Some use story points. Now it's mandatory, basically, more or less, to do sprint goals in Scrum. We have the roles, the product owner, Scrum master, developers, and then one of the pillars, transparency. There are more pillars than this, and there is more to Scrum than this. But this is how I want to present it now for the purpose of this talk. Now, Scrum focus on sprints. Scrum focus on the increments. So deliver an increment, some would say deliver value at the end of each sprint. Sprints, 2 to 4 weeks. Typically, we recommend 2 weeks from now. So far, so good. Now it's actually in the new Scrum guide. Remember that you don't have to wait until the end of the sprint to deliver something. So if you can, please do ship or whatever, put on the staging area, whatever you can. I mean, this is totally unfair to present Scrum like this. I know, but I did it anyways. So I will be totally unfair to Kanban as well. So Kanban is also about having a backlog. Everything in Kanban is prioritized. I'll get back to that. Kanban has 4 to 6 principles we can discuss. Originally, I actually came across 4 principles. I've seen 6 principles. There may be more, but Kanban also uses principles at least. Now, very importantly, when we talk about and think about Kanban is to limit the work in progress. I'll get back to this. Also very, very important when we work with Kanban, I have stated 3 metrics here. There are lots of other metrics, but basically 4 key metrics is pretty key to Kanban. I will not say a lot more about that to limit this scope of today. I mean, one could argue that retrospectives is a part of Kanban. It was not originally, But I mean, nowadays we think about the feedback loops, and so that is what we would do when we do a retrospective, and that is somehow built into Lean and Kanban that way. And then I chose to show transparency here as well, and again, totally unfair, but that is how simple I want to make it today. As I said before, Kanban is all about flow, flow, flow. There is we don't have a sprint in Kanban. Some would argue, well, we do Kanban and we work with sprints. Yes, you probably do. So some do. Originally, there were, I hope we can agree that originally there were no sprints in Kanban. So now I want to do something equally unfair to, and this is not about Kanban, but I have borrowed two terms, two concepts from Kanban, because I find that quite convenient when talking about Kanban, Scrum, and so forth. So the two terms are, the first one is complicated and the other is complex. As you can see there, Kanban has 4 or maybe 5 domains, but I'll leave it with this. And I'll claim that if you want to think about something that is complicated, a task, something that a team needs to do, then think about, okay, this is where we need expert knowledge. It is pretty predictable. There's some level of predictability involved here. We have probably done it before. It's not all new. And to a certain extent, we can see some repetitions sometimes, but not always. So this is the 3 terms, the 3 keywords I want you to think about now. And again, it's too simple, I know, but for the purpose, I'll leave it like that. And when we deal with complex tasks and problems, we would definitely think of something that is unpredictable. This is where we would very often, but not always, need experiments. And definitely the feedback loops are so important when we actually work in the complex domain. And you can argue, hey, don't we need feedback loops in complicated? Yeah. But let's just keep it simple like this. And maybe I will be unpopular now, but I will categorize Kanban over here. Some would say, we can actually do Kanban in a complex domain. Yes, you can. I'll leave it simple here. So if you are in a complicated domain, my advice is to think about, at least try to think about, maybe Kanban would be good to actually use here. Maybe Scrum actually fits into the complex area. I know that according to Kanban, this is pretty much okay. I mean, it is okay. That is actually what Dave Snowden says. Scrum is in the complex, maybe at the edge of complex or complicated. Now, not so long ago, I was asked by a client, well, we do Scrum, but our trainer says that we use a Kanban board. So I think we do Kanban. And it made me think, and it made me actually draw this, because which is Kanban and which is Scrum? The boards are identical, and yet they aren't. So I can imagine now why I was also a bit confused in the beginning, some years ago. Which is Kanban and which is Scrum. I mean, we can't really tell from these boards, right? It's pretty obvious. So we must look for something else. Let's try and do that. Let's try and do that in breakout rooms. Again, type a no before your name if you don't want to be beamed out by Torsten in a minute. You will actually have this slide as well you will actually get this and the one with Kanban and Scrum compare next to each other. So you'll have the link in the chat. And it's, first of all, we actually suggest that you present yourselves. You have 15 minutes today, so present yourselves. And would want to maybe mute. Thank you. And then think of an agile team that is challenged with a method. Not maybe challenged with Scrum or Kanban, challenged with a method that they are actually using, or framework, or whatever you like to call it. And here's the invitation from me. Now discuss how their work is characterized. Is it complicated or is it complex? Don't talk Kanban. I know we have Kanban experts here. Don't bring that into the picture. Is it complicated or complex? And the complicated with the experts, what is predictable, and maybe some repetition, and maybe not. How does this chosen framework, how does their chosen framework fit with what they do? And this is where I hope you will actually bring all the challenges, all the dilemmas or wicked problems into the room, and do some knowledge sharing here, because this is really a learning opportunity. So we do Scrum. Are you sure it fits us? Just go do that. It's not for the debate. We have to do it in the whole organization. And sometimes I come in to help a team or more, and I'm kind of, it takes a few days maybe to find out what are these guys really doing? Are they really in that complex domain that I have started to call it now that I know about Kanban? Or are they actually doing stuff that is not really suitable for Scrum? And that's really where I started, reading a little more about Kanban, and now I've started suggesting to some of the teams, hey, would you like to maybe I could tell you a little about the Kanban. Maybe you could find out whether you want to experiment with that. And often but not always, the teams say, hey, this is really where we fit. And I have to, one more disclaimer, some Scrum teams for some reason get tired of that, and then they do Kanban and forget all about what I will be talking about next. And they just do something on a board. That's not Kanban, and that's being lazy for some reason. So that's not what I'm talking about. But really using Kanban can help teams where Scrum is simply unfit. So that's part of what inspired me to the next stuff here. So thank you for sharing. So you're correct that there is more than just the board, and I'm sure you already discussed it. So this thing about limiting work in progress is extremely important. And we just heard one of you tell about a team with maybe 100 items and too many items in a column. Obviously, they needed to limit the work in progress. So I learned this expression when I first started reading about Kanban. We do it in Scrum as well, but I like it a lot to think about start stopping and stop starting whenever we have too much thing on the board. Goes for Scrum as well as Kanban, but this is really what Kanban, some of the key things in Kanban, limit the work in progress. If you don't do that, and I have many teams who don't, but if you don't do that, you're still getting into problems. So this is really how we want to see, especially a Kanban board, a Scrum board as well, of course, but let's keep it simple. There are a few dilemmas. It's much easier to start a job than to finish it. I knew I had to be quick here. It's much easier to start a job than to finish it. I think all of us agree. And that's really very often how we get these overpopulated columns in a whatever board it is. Oh, it's, now this is difficult. I can always start something new and somebody else will maybe fix it. Not the way to do it. There is a course of context switching. starting, stopping, starting, stopping, and you can read more about that. There is lots of literature of how many projects should you actually run simultaneously and so forth. I'll leave it with this, but less flow is also one of the dilemmas, and I talked about it already. And Kanban is very, very much concerned with this queuing theory. Again, same picture as before. This is how I remember. Kanban, we have to think of flow, flow, flow. We really want to have flow through the system. Kanban is very, very much about having everything prioritized. Some would say, I mean, everything as in everything all the time has to be prioritized. Lots of teams don't do it. They get into problems. So if you don't want to prioritize all the time, then don't use Kanban is my advice. But if you do prioritize, it is going to be a big help here. I want you to look at the pink task here, because the way we do, and this is a Kanban basics, right? So the way we get this pink sticker into the board is, oh, we can't because there's no more room right now. So what we do is we have to move from over here to done and to done. Then we can move from this one to deploy and so forth. That is really how it works. And with such a full board as we see here, the pink task takes a long time to finish. Again, use WIP limits, as I said before, but sometimes we have to have a fast track, and we have that in Kanban as well. Maybe not part of any theory or anything, but that's really, sometimes we have a production problem, there's a defect coming in, no way we could actually wait for this. So of course, shit happens, and that's how we deal with that.
Leise, there's a question.
Yeah.
Do you recommend any specific prioritization technique with Kanban?
I don't personally. There are many, but no, I don't. Pick the one that suits you and your team and the kind of tasks. Yeah, I'm very hesitant to be very specific, because I would probably be right with one team and wrong for somebody else. I mean, I work a lot with weighted shortest job first for prioritizing, first of all, at a certain level. And I love to, but I don't want to go into that level of detail. There are many ways to do it. I hope that answer is okay. Now, I said in the beginning, Kanban deals with 4 to 6 or maybe even more principles, but at least principles. And one of them, as I said before, there has to be a WIP limit on every column. And I have to say that this is not a sprint, because every time I look at this, okay, this is a sprint. No, this is not a sprint, just for your information. But this is how we do put WIP limits on every column. And this means, I mean, I should say that each team will define their own WIP limits. Don't ever do it at an enterprise level. It will never work. But find out, how does each team get the highest flow, the best flow throughput. So in this example, they allow two stickers on, or tasks or stories or whatever it is, to have that in progress, and there can be 6 in analyze ready, 4 in total for reviews, etc., etc. But this is really how to do. Let's go just a little deeper and talk about when to use Scrum and when to use Kanban. Again, this is by no means exhaustive, but I'll give you a few examples that I came to think of. Just a repetition. This has been suitable for me to think about. I actually do work with Scrum teams, and they became much more happy when some of that was a maintenance task. They made a Kanban board, totally Kanban with WIP limits and so forth. Everybody's happy, and for the complex stuff, they have their Scrum boards. So this is Scrum, and this is a burn down chart. Some Scrum teams like to have a burn down chart, and the point here is that what I want to say, that if a burn down chart for your team looks more or less like this, then you could probably think of Scrum as a pretty good way of working. If they want to do sprints, they have the increments, again, deliver during the sprint as well. Yeah, why not think about Scrum? But, and this is a real life experience, if you see this, it's still a sprint burn down, then really consider if Scrum is feasible for this team. This means that this team start a lot of things, and then the day before the sprint end, they close everything, they finalize everything, and maybe it's not even finalized, but they move it on to the next sprint. And when I see things like this, I have a talk with them and say, okay, why is this really happening? Because maybe their stories are just too big. That's how this team actually were working. They didn't really slice them the way that they, I mean, could fit a better sprint burn down, so that we could really see progress, because there's no way as a Scrum Master I can see any progress for this kind of team. So maybe they're too big, they need to be sliced different. There are tons of other reasons that could be the reason for this, but this is what I have seen. And then be aware of what I call a stages iterations within Scrum. So sprint 1, this is where we do analysis of, maybe they even do a project. We start doing analysis of what we need to analyze, and then we are ready for the design, then we implement, and then we test, and then we are ready for the release. I've seen this and I ask, okay, when are you done? When is something coming into production? Sometimes they know and sometimes they don't. This has got nothing to do with Scrum, by the way, but what about Kanban? Question to you. What about Kanban? Would you consider Kanban for such a team?
I would consider inviting them to do a retro, because that's clearly something that's not working for them.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd just ask them.
Yeah, what is happening?
How well does this reflect our customers' expectations of the rate of delivery?
Yeah, exactly.
And what if it's too slow for them? How can we change that?
Yeah, because maybe this is okay, but maybe then it's not Scrum. Yeah.
Daniel, I think you had.
It for me, it looks more like a waterfall method, because with this kind of approach, you can't even see whether you have any limitations on your WIP, and it's very hard to know whether you're pulling or where are you at any particular moment.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually, the first version of this slide said waterfall within Scrum, and then I didn't want to. I wanted you to think about this. I think waterfall is as well, but as stages iterations, we see that maybe a little too often. Well, we see it too often, and they think they're doing Scrum. But what about Kanban?
I think, Leise, before we move on, I saw Daniel unmute, and then we managed to talk over you. So did you have something similar or different?
I was just thinking that I would not even consider Kanban in this, but I would definitely consider a behavioral change in how do we see smaller items that can be delivered end to end. But I'm very, very curious on if you have any sort of hints on the Kanban side on this.
Yeah, I wish I had. Before I continue, let's look at the Kanban principles, at least the ones that I will be touching upon today. So everybody agrees that at Kanban we need to visualize the work. We do that in Scrum as well. But in Kanban, it is pretty important to impose WIP limits. The limiting work in progress, again, it's so key. Don't even think about not doing it if you consider Kanban. And then in the red, it says start ordering, meaning prioritize. It can be very difficult, but you have to do it. That's one of the principles. And then the next one can really be debated. Consider to stop estimated. I don't say stop estimating, but maybe you could consider stopping. I've seen it as a principle. And how can I say that? How can we say that? Because once there is flow in some for some examples, for some teams, that is really, really okay, that they need the flow. They don't need the estimating. Doesn't work for all teams, but I wanted to mention it here. And then I have put here triggered planning, because in Kanban we don't have these sprint planning. We don't necessarily, we don't do the sprints. So we saw it in the video, by the way. So for example, once a column is empty or almost empty, maybe you should start somehow planning how do we get the next stuff to the board. And then this metric focus is pretty important. So back to this stage iterations, and let's look at if we would like to consider Kanban, how are we? And I actually copied the principles in here. So if we look at the yellow one, visualize the work. Have we visualized the work here? Yes, we have. I could have a backlog, a to-do out here as well, of course. I should have had that. How about start ordering and prioritizing? We can easily do that here. We can trigger the planning. What about the imposing VIP limits? Sure, we could just, this team could decide how many stories or tasks or whatever they would have on each board. They could actually consider stopping estimating as long as they have flow and use some metrics. So maybe, and maybe not, but maybe this team could start considering Kanban and go away with these sprints. Then we have what could be a Kanban board. So no easy answer, but yeah, maybe maybe I would, if I had to, maybe I could recommend do this. But I fully agree with you guys. What was the problem with this waterfallish way of believing they did Scrum? But I thought this was a rather fun example. Now, Kanban also have policies. So they're called Kanban process policies. So, I mean, you cannot do Kanban without having these policies for when to move something from one column to another. Remember, it's pretty important. They vary from team to team. Don't even try this one size fits all. And what works for you might not work for others. An example of a policy is, we all also know this from the Scrum world, the definition of done. There you go. So before something is accepted, it is not done. Another example from the car production line is that a car can only move when the tires have been fitted and are filled with air, and the windscreen wipers are attached to the vehicle, and so forth, etc., etc. So policies are part of Kanban as well. I have only have, I think I have 3 or 4 more slides. And they are really about the last point in on my agenda, and it deals with imposition or invitation. So I would like you guys, I really would like you to use the chat now, and I will do like this. So
Running's the best way to lose weight, right?
Was that a question or some noise? Okay. I would like you to write in the chat. Do you think that we should impose Kanban on any teams? Should we impose Kanban on any teams? I'm a coach. I see the light. You should do Kanban. Should I do this? No, I should not. Maybe I just put the words in your mouth, but some really, some believe it, and it is okay. I hope I'll see a yes, because then we can have some discussions here. My leg lead would say yes. Yeah. So somebody would say yes. It is not Jesper, but we know people who would say yes. Let's take it from there. I'm really happy with you guys. But anyways, I have an exercise, it only takes 2 minutes, that I want to work with you on. So should we impose Kanban? Well, some would say yes. Let me just do like this. Should we then impose Scrum on any teams? I mean, I can guess your answers now. No, we should probably not impose Scrum either. So should we ever impose anything on any teams? Let me see what you. So maybe don't talk about or think about Kanban or Scrum, but are there times where you, in whatever position you are, you feel like, hey, if only I could tell them this is really, really what you guys have to do. Maybe you're Scrum Masters. I'm responsible for the processes. How can I be that if you don't want to do this? So now please go do. So anybody, have you ever considered imposing and forcing anybody to do something? By Christian. My logic and heart says no. Yeah, but at the same time, I can see some teams enjoying now the results of certain framework that has been imposed in the past. Ah, that's interesting. Was that Sivar? Would you like to maybe elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, I've seen the, as I said, I've seen the results of Scrum being imposed, and there was a lot of people who didn't understand why, and there was a lot of irritation in the beginning. But now, after having gone through some transition, after having learned and starting to reap the benefits, people start enjoying and even go and try to preach this to other teams and other people and other colleagues. So that's funny.
Yeah, it's a bit funny. Also, Soul, you say, yes, I would impose something. If it is an immature team that is just transitioning to Agile, oh, I love this. Yeah, because now I want to do the exercise with you. And a new message says in the sprint. Would you like to say a few words, Jim, so that I don't just read aloud? Feel free to do so.
No, I just think sometimes, I mean, and I'm basically the last 3 or 4 years, I think that approach, I mean, people call people like us in to help them with something. And so I think we need to be bold and say, all right, based off of what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, I would suggest this, and I want you guys to give me and give this a chance. I think by doing these things, it will help here, and then let's give it a chance. Let's experiment with it. And then, you know, at the end of this sprint or maybe 2 sprints, let's reevaluate and see what do we need to change.
Yeah. It happens a lot. Yeah, super. In larger organizations, it can be overwhelming to just let people do whatever they want. Yeah, we have to find a balance. Yeah. And Eric imposes teams to work in agile ways. Yeah. Now I really want to do this. It's only takes 2 minutes or so exercise, and then we're basically done. So I hope you're ready for, no, this is not a physical exercise. It is just 2 scenarios that I will walk you through. It's really, really quick. So I hope you're ready and start. My invitation anyways is that close your eyes. No way I can check, but close your eyes. Keep them open if you want to. You can read my slides then. So the invitation is to close your eyes. And then think of this. Your superior has booked you to a mandatory workshop, so you have to be there. But you were not involved in the preparation, and you don't find it meaningful to spend time on it. Now, what are your feelings right now? What are your feelings? So write them down or just remember, think about that feeling. You are imposed to a mandatory workshop. What are your feelings? I have one more question. Again, close your eyes. And now imagine that a facilitator has booked you to a workshop. and you were involved in preparing it, and you are free to opt in or leave as you wish. So what are your feelings right now? Write that down, or maybe just remember that feeling. And this is really the end of the exercise. What are your feelings? You were invited. You don't have to share them at all. Just remember these feelings. So I hope you're done and with me now. So which of these two feelings did you like most? And if you like, you can share it in the chat, or again, just unmute. And again, you don't have to share anything. Maybe you could say scenario 1, I like that one, or scenario 2, I like that one. But I'm curious to find out what you think. I want to look at you guys. So we have, yeah, so the last one, annoyed versus motivated, the last one, yeah, let me see, super, and motivated to contribute, yeah, you would feel some responsibility, frustration, resentment versus curiosity, yeah, anxiety versus excited, involvement creates understanding, engagement, and ownership, sure, protest versus freedom. Thanks a lot. I really, really appreciate this, because I mean, probably all of us like to impose something on other people. Very, very often you get so frustrated. Okay, I only have one more choice, but you just, you felt it in your body, in your mind, wherever you felt something, and had a feeling. The very minute that you could decide that you were liberated, just to use that word, probably your motivation increased. So my invitation, and this will be my final words, my invitation is that every time, and I use it myself, every time I even start thinking about, oh, if I could just force them to do it, everything would be so easy. And then I start thinking, okay, what if everything is voluntary, opt in? People's actually, and this really happens every time I do it, people start following me. Some would maybe follow me, and the other if I impose something, but the results are much better when people start following, because they find it fun, they are motivated, they are really engaged, and so forth. So I have stopped a couple of years ago. I've stopped imposing anything. Everything is voluntary, and there's so much bag up and so much happiness instead of that. So that's one way that that I think of this. Any comments? Feel free to speak up, because I've challenged some of you now. Never, never, ever impose. There are other ways. What are you saying?
It's more of a question. I wonder why, when I was looking for Kanban courses, so I almost couldn't find any taught here in Denmark. So I had to look outside and took a course from the guy from Portugal online. So why do you think it's not so widespread here?
To be honest, I have no idea, but I know we have an expert, and if you are, yeah, Ulrik, you're still here. I'm sure you have an answer, because you also you have started Kanban training, or is going to. Do you have any opinion on this, or knowledge on
Scrum
this?
has like a 10-15 year head start on Kanban.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and you know, when we see now with the current success of SAFe, but if you've been following it, it's been in the works for maybe 10 years at least before it starts to gain traction. So I think that's a large part of it, simply that some things have been around for longer, and that helps them spread.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Fair enough.
And the success kind of also builds on the success, right? So the more people who are doing Scrum, the more people become aware of Scrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jim Boy says, your decision not to impose is an invitation to trust and engage. Great when it works. Yeah, and for me, it always does. It never fails. And to be as a coach, you have to be bold and direct a path to a immutable groove. Yeah, that's true. So a couple of more minutes. Any questions?
Can I just say a word about the next time, Leise?
Ulrik?
I just want to mention briefly about the next session that you've been kind, but you have kind of oversold it. So the advanced Kanban stuff was the previous session.
Okay.
And I think my hope for the next session is that we'll just do some Kanban using that freely available web-based software that Dan Vacanti and his colleagues have created. So so we can have some experience together, have some fun together, just trying Kanban out. And that so that those of you who are coaches and just haven't had the time maybe to look into this tool, you get acquainted with the tool so you can maybe use it with some of your teams. So just wanted to make sure that it won't be advanced Kanban the next time, quite on the contrary.
Okay, maybe a little more advanced than today. But we do have your advanced class or meetup in recordings, as far as I recall. So if you want to see that, you can go and watch it. Yeah. Okay.
Is there any place where we can access the previous webinars
Yes,
that's being recorded?
Yes, and then I'll definitely go and look for Ulrik's. I'm pretty sure I uploaded it on mine, so we'll let you know there. Would you agree, Torsten? That's the way to.
That's how we do it right now.
Yeah, and some.
Okay, yeah, it's just expectations from other departments and other interests. When do you deliver the software? How can a Kanban team answer that question? Because they, yeah. So that's I think the hard thing.
Yeah. So my first question is, can a Scrum team actually give a better prediction? But that was not your question. And I'm just thinking, especially if I tell them, well, maybe you don't need to estimate.
So let that be a cliffhanger for Wednesday next week. We'll try to get it answered on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
We will definitely bring it forward to Ulrik next time.
Yeah.
So and with that, thank you, Leise, very much for introducing Kanban in the way you did here, and thank you everyone for taking active part in the session.
Yeah, thanks a lot for showing up.
Thank you.
Great, and see you maybe next week.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.